Okay, very nice to now present Imran Asghar from Aalto University, who has been a pioneer in the semiconductor type of materials for conversion of hydrogen to electricity by new approaches. So please, Imran, present your background and the topic which you have in this session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mikael, for your nice introduction and your kind invitation to this workshop. So let me share my screen and then I will introduce there my topic and also myself. So basically, my name is Imran Asghar and I'm working at Aalto University, and I'm also working in China in Hubei University. And today I'll be talking about semiconductors and solid oxide fuel cells, and especially since hydrogen is gaining growing attention across the globe. And so it's a really emerging technology. Fuel cell is an emerging technology, and the role of semiconductor is very crucial for their development. So this is what I will be focusing in my talk today. So let's start with first of all, briefly, I like to acknowledge my funding sources, which are Academy of Finland and Talent 100 program in Hubei province in China, who are supporting my research on fuel cells. And briefly, I'd like to talk about my background. I've been working on solar cells, basically dye solar cells, perovskite solar cells, and there I've been using different semiconductor materials, because like titanium dioxide and other semiconductor materials, and perovskites, which is the breakthrough recently in the last decade, where the efficiencies of solar cells improved from 3% to over 20%. So all because of this engineering in semiconductor. And nowadays I'm more focusing on fuel cells, and there we apply different semiconductor materials in different configurations, in conventional 3-layer structures and also a novel single-layer fuel cells. And so here are some contents which I will briefly cover in this short presentation. So first I will talk about these nanocomposite ceramic fuel cells and single-layer cells, and then what are the key steps in my research. So here you see a schematic of fuel cell. So there are some redox reactions and ionic conductivity, and there you can apply different materials. And there are challenges that mostly these fuel cells are operating at higher temperature, which causes loss of degradation mechanisms and limited choice of materials. However, by using different nanocomposite materials, which are basically wide bandgap semiconductor materials, we can lower the temperature of these devices. And for example, here you see the schematic structure of those. With the help of these composite materials, we can achieve multi-ionic conduction, which allows lowering the operating temperature of these devices, because they offer higher ionic conductivity at lower temperatures because of these wide bandgap materials. We synthesize our materials by different methods, and recently we achieved a breakthrough using these nanocomposite materials. We achieved 0.5 Siemens per centimeter at 550, and applying those in our fuel cell devices, we achieved over 1.1 watt per square centimeter. And we realized that by changing the fabrication method, by using the advanced modern technologies, we can reach performances beyond state of the art. So basically here, as you see on the left-hand side, we have these pressing methods. We use our semiconductor materials, these nanocomposite materials, and we achieved about 1.1 watt per square centimeter. However, by using these printing methods, for example, here you see in the video, the digital printing of our nanocomposite materials, we can achieve performances beyond state of the art, and our target is to reach beyond 2 watt per square centimeter. So here you see like the painting. So you can precisely control the thickness of the layers, their densities, and these techniques are low cost and quite good for upscaling of this technology. So we use different characterization techniques, high temperature XRD, thermogravimetric analysis, differential scanning calorimetry. So these techniques are important to understand the mechanisms in these devices and to improve the overall stability of these devices. For example, here we see 3D tomography. So there we can visualize these materials in 3Ds, and we can do in detail analysis about their interfaces, because these semiconductors and their interfaces with these carbonates is very crucial for improving the ionic conductivity in these devices. And with the help of these modern characterization techniques, we can do in detail analysis. So this scanning electron microscope is quite important technique. And then I will briefly talk about single layer cells. So unlike conventional fuel cell technology or any other electrochemical technologies, which consist of 3 layers, we can make fuel cells with a single layers. And thanks to wide band gap semiconductor materials, which allows these fuel cells to operate, because as you can see in a single layer, they should short circuit. However, with the help of this wide band gap semiconductor materials, we can build some kind of junctions that the built-in voltage of those junctions can prevent the short circuit in these cells. And with this kind of configuration, we can reduce the manufacturing cost of fuel cells, we can simplify the system design, and it improves the overall stability of these devices. And with the help of this simple configuration, we have achieved about 1 watt per square centimeter at 550, which is really promising. So here are a few examples of our semiconductor, like this fuel cell devices, and this is how they look like. So we have been optimizing their synthesis, optimizing of the materials, their fabrication methods, and their characterization. So for example, here you see high resolution transmission electron microscope, and here we see their interfaces between these semiconductor materials and the amorphous carbonates, which leads to high performance in these devices. And here we see that applying different materials. Here we applied gold and across these fuel cells, and here we applied some semiconductor materials on both sides of the cells, and we see the performance of these cells is almost doubled when we apply these semiconductor current collectors. So it shows that there's lots of possibilities to improve the performance of these devices, and lots of areas can be explored to improve the stability of these devices with the help of the semiconductor materials. So this band gap engineering is very important. So there we performed a systematic study to understand the mechanisms in the device, and there we found this ionic conduction that is happening and that is facilitated by the semiconductor and amorphous carbonates interface, which improved the overall performance of these devices. So here we also study some other engineering parameters. By adding porosity across the devices, we can improve the device performance, and also by improving the ionic conductivity. So we can use, we can do different defect engineering in those materials. We can create channels that kind of that facilitate the ionic conduction through those channels, and as a result, the performance of these devices improve. So then I would like to briefly talk about my next steps in research, or my key research, which I'm focusing on. So far we have achieved 1 watt per square centimeter milestone using conventional method. And now my research is mainly focusing on digital printing. And we believe that using these potential advanced techniques, we can reach beyond 2 watt per square centimeter. So there we need to develop our inks of our semiconductor materials, which are basically semiconductors and composite carbonates. And using those materials, we can achieve those performances. So we have to also understand the performance limiting factors. And there we need to understand the engineering, the defect engineering of those materials, so that we can optimize the bands of those semiconductor materials to optimize, to block the leakage currents and improve the device performances. And also degradation mechanisms we are focusing on. So that's basically briefly about my research, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion on semiconductors in fuel cells. So thank you.
Yes, that is great. Thank you very much. And one thing which I really appreciate here is that you have new science in semiconductors and explore that, but then you apply engineering type of thinking, but also manufacturing, all these things into one avenue. because usually it's you start with the science about the material and try to understand the properties, and then think about fabrication methods which are viable for the industry, all these things. So here you have all these things together, and this is very nice, because then you can shorten the long period from implementation, from research to industry, with many years, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, because I really believe in that somehow there's so much advancements going on in technologies, and we should really take advantage of those. For example, 3D printing is really growing, and which can be applied in different technologies. And also, like the semiconductor materials, especially semiconductor materials, they're growing, and lots of new materials are appearing. So there's lots of research going on. So it's kind of, we need to pick the best technologies, like semiconductor materials, the best fabrication methods. And this is how we can, not only on fuel cells, but also on batteries and other solar cells, we can, so somehow the sciences are kind of merging together. You can get the key concepts from other technologies. For example, in our single layer fuel cells, we are using this bulk heterojunction concepts, which is originally from solar cells, basically. But these semiconductor materials are really amazing, because the same semiconductor materials in solar cells, it's the same mechanism that we are using in our fuel cells. And so that's really interesting. And it's very important, in my opinion, to see the advancements in research in different areas, because things are kind of interconnected.
Yes, and this is what my feeling also from this area, because you explore some properties and understand more, but suddenly it can be applied in another concept, not only to convert energy, you can maybe store it with these type of materials or the mechanisms which are there because they are new. So that's, and at the end, for the energy and renewable energy and the climate and so on, we need to have different types of technologies which act together. And this, I think, you have possible in this material concept.
Yeah, certainly. And I think this also helps in overcoming the challenges which the technologies are facing and the industry is facing, especially because when we are focusing on, we are taking advantages of all the developments in different areas. This is how we can also solve the challenges in industry, which are really important. And also new innovations are possible only when you explore new materials and you see that this material has been working in some device, and you can get different ideas, and then you know from your background that you can also apply the same material in your devices, and that can solve your problems. So I think this multidisciplinary research is very important, and there's a huge need to explore new materials and apply and utilize new methods, explore new fabrication methods, and also try different characterization techniques, state of the art. And this is how things improve overall.
Yes, I fully agree. And overall, at the end, in order to implement these things, then we need to have collaborations, international collaborations. And this is a part of this session, why we are presenting these things, to initiate know-how so we can start discussions and then come into projects and so on. So thank you very much for presenting your work in this session.
Yes, certainly. I think it's also, I believe that somehow it's also the time to collaborate, and also because we all have different expertise, and it's so hard for one person to know everything. The best is to talk to each other, learn from each other, and utilize our knowledge collectively and solve the problem, because these problems that we are facing in energy problems and the material problems that we are facing, it's not like one body problem, it's like a collective problem. And I believe that they can be solved collectively. So what we need is like collaboration, and from each other's expertise, we can collectively solve those problems and bring new innovations.
Yes, great. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mikael.